when you look at the KPIs, the metrics on what's most important in the sales funnel, your sales percentage, your closing percentage will never go past what your contact rate is. If you're only contacting or you're only able to speak to 10% of your leads, you're never going to close more than 10% of your leads. So if your contact rate goes higher, though, naturally, your closing percentage follows it right on up. Not to say that every single lead you talk to, you'll close, but this is why it's so important, because the more people you talk to, naturally, the more applications you're going to write. I know that to be true as a producer myself. And as someone who's been working in the lead generation and marketing space now for many, many, many years, I know this to be true as well. So, with that being said, I want to jump into a little webinar I created for you guys today. And if you enjoy this type of content, I want to also give a plug and a shout out to Seven Figure University. This is the type of content, excuse me, this is the type of content, the type of training you get if you are a seven-figure university member. So you can head over to sevenfigureu.com if you want to learn more about the university. Live trainings are typically happening every Thursday morning in Seven Figure University. And then, of course, you have a very robust library, hundreds of videos on how you can be a top producer. So, that being said, let me share my screen and let's jump right into it. All right. Give me just a second while I get this pulled up, you guys. Boom. All right, slideshow. We did it. We did it. How to increase your contact rate with leads and clients. So again, this is the most important part in the funnel. Step one, how can you get a hold of more people? This includes your clients, right? If you're trying to schedule, AAP appointments, if you're trying to help someone whose premium is about to go through the roof, we're talking about saving those subs, right? Obviously, we all know the Medicare supplement premiums have been going through the roof. So if you want to try to help folks, whether it's a lead or a client, and you're struggling to get them on the phone, there could be many reasons why that is. And that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. And again, this is something I'm a bit of an expert in. I've been managing a call center, and I'm the founder and owner of a call center now for over 10 years. So our specialty is really getting people on the phone. And it's something that's evolved a ton over the past 10 years. I was talking yesterday in the university training about this. When I first started doing this, it was pretty easy to get people on the phone. It seemed like our contact rate was naturally probably 10 times higher than the sort of like, if you just try to pick up your phone and dial today and you're not doing anything special, versus if you did that same thing 10 years ago, there was so many less barriers, so much less competition, there's less regulation. Fast forward to today, there's a lot of obstacles now. So this is what I want to talk to you about, is how you can avoid some of these pitfalls and hopefully get a hold of more leads and more prospects and write more applications. So that being said, let's jump into it. The number one reason why you are not getting a hold of your leads or you're not getting a hold of your clients is because you have a number that's showing up as spam likely on your phone. If you don't know what I mean, Um, Lillian, I appreciate you dropping a question on the stream. Guys, again, Freebie Fridays today. Drop any questions or comments on the stream. I will try to get to them before the end of this presentation here I'm going through with you guys today. Um, and let's see what we can do. So, one of the number one reasons why you aren't getting a hold of leads is because your number is being flagged as spam. And what that means is, if you've ever gotten like a telemarketer that calls you out of the blue, someone you don't know, you've probably seen this on your smartphone before, especially if you have like an iPhone or an Android phone. It'll pop up really big. But even with like home phones now, usually the caller ID will pop up and it will tell you, you know, hey, this is a spam likely call. So what can you do to avoid from your phone number showing up as spam when you call somebody? Because if you do, you'll probably have a 5% or less contact rate. I mean, I've talked to an agent before, guys, where going through the numbers with them, they were having about a 2% contact rate. And it was very quick. It was very easy to diagnose after going through some of these numbers. I'm like, your phone number must be flagged as spam. I'm like, there's no other way that you're calling 100 people and you're only getting a hold of 2 people out of 100. The only way you do that is if your phone number is showing up as spam. So what I really want is, if you don't know, step one is figuring out, is my phone number showing up as spam? Pick up your phone and call another phone. This could be your wife's phone, your husband's phone, your friend's phone. Maybe you have 2 different phone numbers. This could be your dialer system. You're using a shout out to Seven Figure CRM. That's our white label Go High Level that we offer. There's a phone system in there. Whatever phone you're using to contact your leads or to contact your clients, call another phone that you're able to easily know what your number looks like when it goes through. That's step one. Now, if it isn't showing as spam, awesome. But we're going to get into some reasons why your number gets flagged as spam and how you can avoid it getting flagged. If it is showing up as spam, we're also going to talk about what you can do to try to avoid that happening in the future. So let's talk about why phone numbers get flagged as spam to begin with. This really goes back to the United States government increasing regulation around the carriers in the United States, because they're directing all this call traffic, right? So if you make a phone call, no matter how you make it, it is going through some type of carrier. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, CenturyLink, Comcast. There is some type of telecommunications carrier, Twilio. It doesn't matter how it's being piped. It goes through, for that phone call to go from one point to another point, it has to go through some sort of telecommunications carrier. The government stepped in and said, because there were so many spam calls and scam calls, they said, hey, you guys have to regulate this better. This is not okay with how many spam and scam calls are getting through, these unknown numbers, these numbers coming from overseas that nobody knows. And if you remember correctly, you go back to 2018, 2019, 2020, I'd say like 2019, 2020 was really probably the peak of it before they implemented StirShake. It was really bad. It was really bad. So StirShake protocol was essentially the FCC and the United States government working together to create a system where, if they're seeing activity connected to a phone number or connected to a DID, they can start to flag that phone number and basically slow that traffic down, or even stop that traffic from getting to the other end, from point A to point B. Again, think about it like a pipeline. The carrier can literally just stop that pipeline and stop the flow of that traffic, or dramatically slow it down. You might think your phone number is showing up as spam, and that's why it's not being answered. There's also the possibility that your phone call's not even going through. They're not even showing it on the other end. That's another possibility if you get scored very negatively through the telecommunication carriers. Again, this algorithm that they use with the stir shake protocol and the technology that they use to monitor phone numbers and to monitor traffic, it advances all the time. It's similar to kind of like a Google search algorithm in that same way, where, it's not the exact same thing that they implemented in 2019, 2020. It's being continuously updated, and they're trying to do more to limit these scam calls and these spam calls. So what some of the main activities that create a spam likely phone number: if you make too many calls in one day from one number, typically this is between 70 and 100 calls. You do more than 70 to 100 calls in a day from one phone number, it's pretty likely you're going to be flagged as spam. If you make too many calls too quickly, a lot of these insurance sales trainers are always talking about, triple dial your leads, triple dial your leads. Well, that sounds great in theory, and I know it can work, but you're also risking your potential phone number getting flagged because you're calling too quickly too many times. So you need to know that that's a possibility. The other thing that could happen is you could call a phone number that's essentially a trap from one of the carriers. You call a number that's basically just set up for like a robocall trap, where the second you hit this number, they automatically flag your number. You could call someone and someone gets upset for whatever reason, and they tell the carrier that you're a spam or scam caller, and then they flag your number. So there's all these different things that could happen that could cause your number to get flagged. And, checking, I would say you want to consistently check to make sure that your number has not been flagged as spam. The other thing you can do, though, is to try to avoid some of these activities like I just talked about, by not making too many calls too quickly with one number, by not making too many calls in one day with one number, by rotating between several different numbers. It can be some pretty simple math when you think about it. If you know, hey, I'm going to make 500 calls today, then you probably need 7 or 8 phone numbers. So you're definitely staying below that 100 calls per number per day, right? Let's talk about how you can fix this if you do get flagged as spam. So there's, we talked about how you can avoid getting your number flagged, but what do you do if it's already flagged? Well, one is you want to stop using that phone number right away, because if you let it sit for typically about a week to 2 weeks, a lot of times it will automatically have the spam or scam likely removed. That's important, as I would stop using any number that's been flagged. I would stop using it immediately. There are also some databases that exist out there. One of them I believe is called Hiya, Hiya. There's several of these different databases where you can basically register your phone number to white label with the telecommunication carriers, or to whitelist with the telecommunication carriers. So that way they know that, hey, this is a legitimate business and this is a real phone number and this is not a spam caller. That can help get your number removed from spam. One thing that we've started doing at ESI, because we had this same problem, and it really affected us calling our existing clients. And that was something that really bothered us, because again, we're trying to use our main office number, and that's a really important phone number, right? If our main office number is showing up as spam or scam likely and our clients aren't answering the phone, we're talking about a really big problem. So what we started doing, imagine like a toll road. This is the analogy I used yesterday. If you're trying to get somewhere quickly, sometimes a toll road could be the best option. And you have to pay a little bit of money, but now you have, a better lane of traffic or less traffic, and you can get to point B quicker. There's something called branded caller ID that exists out there where you can pay a small fee per phone call, depending on your carrier and how you're set up. This could be a fraction of a penny, or this could be a penny or a couple pennies per call. But it will essentially, you're paying this tokenization to, or this toll to the telecommunications carrier, so that way they know, okay, this is ESI, this is a legitimate insurance agency, and they're calling someone, and we need to make sure that their caller ID shows their business and doesn't show as spam or scam likely. This has helped us a ton. We have had zero problems since implementing branded caller ID. Before we did that, we would try to register our phone number with some of these services and try to whitelist our phone number, and that can help. But personally, if this is a really big deal, or if you're really struggling with this, if you're a bigger agency, if you have a main office number and you make thousands of calls from that main office number, I highly recommend checking out something like branded caller ID. I think that's a really kind of great overview, especially if you have no idea what this spam likely thing is, or how it happens, or how you can avoid it, or how you can fix your number if it has been flagged as spam or scam. This is the number one problem agents and agencies deal with. It's the number one problem even today in 2026. This has been happening now for 5 or 6 years. This is still a huge problem that some of you don't understand what's going on. This could change your contact rate from, 1 to 3% to now you're getting, 10, 15, 20%. I mean, you're talking about a probably 5x to 10x increase if your phone number is showing up as legitimate to your prospect, to your leads, to your clients, versus a spam likely or a scam likely call. Put yourselves in the shoes of the consumer. Are you likely to answer the phone if it shows up and pops up on your phone that it's a scam likely or a spam likely? No, you're probably not, right? I mean, that's the natural consumer viewpoint. I'm probably not answering that phone unless I really know, oh, this is actually a call I've been waiting for. Oh, this is a call I really need to answer. I'm probably not answering that phone. I hope that really helps you guys out, that piece of it alone. We're going to get into a few more things about how you can increase your contact rate, but check your phone numbers, guys. Check your phone numbers, and maybe add some additional phone numbers to what you're doing if you're doing a lot of dialing. Next part of increasing your contact rate is how many contact attempts should you make. So, obviously it's kind of this balance of, you make too many calls to one number, you might piss somebody off, right? um, or they might just not want to answer that phone, or maybe it's not the right number, etc. So there's a point of no return, or a point of you're not getting a return on your investment of time when you're making too many contact attempts. I personally like 10 contact attempts per lead before I'm moving on. And not saying that that's necessarily you personally making those 10 contact attempts. Obviously, if you're a newer agent, maybe it is you doing those 10 contact attempts. You're manually dialing because you're trying to get your leads on the phone. You're trying to talk to more prospects. But I'm talking about a total of 10 contact attempts. And then I'm probably going to shift that lead into a drip follow up system where they're getting like a text once a week or an email once a week. And then maybe it slows down from there and ends up going into a drip once a month. And then they'll just consistently, they're getting drip follow up. I think at those 10 contact attempts, and I'm going to kind of get into it by the end of this. I want you guys to understand what I would engineer for like this perfect contact attempt funnel, how I would set it up. I'll kind of get into that a little bit further, but for the sake of right now in the presentation, I just want you guys to understand, I would probably contact them 3 times day one. I'm probably going to make 10 contact attempts before I'm going to move that lead into a drip follow-up. And this could be a mix of different contact points. It could be texts, it could be calls, it could be emails. This is a kind of a sample funnel that you're seeing on the screen here. I think you can do this a few different ways. Again, I would probably try to have a couple of automated immediate follow-ups when the lead hits your system or hits your website, so they're getting like a text or an email or both right away. Then I'm either personally calling this person 3 times in the first 24 hours, or I'm having a member of my team, whether that's an LOA agent, an admin staff, a virtual assistant, or I'm having them contact them, 3 times that first day. Then I'm doing a, phone call once a day at least, or maybe it's twice a day. You kind of have to play with this cadence to figure out what's best for you and your system and your agency. But the key part here is just being consistent with every single lead that hits your system and hitting that quantity, that volume of contact attempts, because that consistency plus the quantity of contact attempts, those are the two things that are going to really impact your contact rate the most. Whoops. Oh no. Sorry, I bounced ahead on us here. Let me get back. Okay. Um, the next thing that can help with your contact rate is what time and day are you calling? So, depending on your demographic, are you trying to focus on seniors who are already on Medicare? Are you trying to focus on folks new to Medicare, turning 65? Are you potentially selling final expense and you're working with maybe folks even a little bit younger than Medicare age? Um, those things all play into what is the best time and day to contact your leads or contact your clients. Personally, Monday to Friday, I like early mornings the best, probably 9 to 11 a.m. I think folks are most likely to be home. They haven't gone out the door yet. You're not calling them so early that you're upsetting them. I think Monday to Friday, the early morning window of 9 to 11 a.m., that's my favorite. Now, the best time all week could be Saturday mornings. I love Saturday morning, like 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. I also like the idea of kind of blocking your call schedules. If you're doing a lot of phone calls, you're blocking, I'm going to make calls from 9 to 11, then I'm going to try calling, 1 to 2, and then I'm going to try calling 4 to 6. I think that can be a lot more efficient in getting a hold of more people than just sitting on the phone from, 9 to a.m. to 3 p.m. hammering it nonstop. So, potentially blocking some different time windows throughout the day, hitting leads and hitting prospects and clients, hitting them different days of the week. And then, some days or times to avoid. I think Friday afternoon is definitely a black hole. I think that's probably one of the worst times you can call, is like from 1 to 7 p.m. on a Friday. People are more likely to be traveling, to be out, to be doing things. People are visiting them. I don't like Friday afternoons at all. So I would avoid Friday afternoons. I don't like Sundays either. I personally think most people want Sundays off. I don't think they want to be contacted on Sundays. I will say, though, a caveat to that, I had a trainer when I came into the industry, and one of his favorite times to dial was on Sundays. So he would actually dial Sunday afternoons from like 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. And he acted like that was the best time because everybody was home. They were getting home from church, and he acted like he'd always have really great conversations on Sundays. Didn't my preference, I did it maybe one time where I tried calling on Sundays. I didn't love it. I felt like I was kind of interrupting people, but you kind of have to figure out what works best for you, on top of maybe trying to figure out what works best for the demographic that you're contacting, and then really optimizing your schedule from there. I already kind of talked about this, hitting some of these windows. This slide says 10 to 11:30. I actually like 9 to 11. I'd roll that back a little earlier. That midday can be rough, but again, if you're talking to a senior that's 70 plus, they're probably home all day, so you can get some folks home, some folks on the phone, and they're at home 1 to 3. Then you also have this evening block, which I think a lot of people are getting home, especially if you've got folks who are still working. Maybe they're working part-time, they're getting up early. Sometimes that evening block right around dinner or before dinner time can be good as well. But tracking is important here, and understanding what's working and what's not working, and then doubling down on what's working, because you want to be more efficient with your time or with your team's time, whether that's an admin or a virtual assistant or an LOA agent. You want to maximize the ROI on the time that they're spending calling leads, calling clients. Automation. Here's another big part of having a higher contact rate with leads and clients. Utilizing automation to maximize response rates. Now, there's also kind of a teeter totter here, a balance of, if you hit them with too many automations, if you're not getting a hold of someone and you're sending out like 3 automations a day every day for several weeks, you're asking for trouble. You're probably going to have somebody complain. They're upset that, you won't leave them alone. I think that's way too many. Again, my personal preference with automation, automated follow-ups, I like immediate touch points when a lead hits your website or your system. And then I like physical phone calls, whether that's you, your admin, a virtual assistant. And then after several physical phone call attempts, then I'm potentially pivoting back to automation. But usually the magic happens when you actually get that person on the phone. You get that lead or you get that prospect or that client on the phone. So I this is almost like seasoning when you're cooking. It's kind of in that same mindset where I think if you do a little bit, it can go a long ways and it makes a huge difference. And if you don't do any, it's going to suck, right? You're going to definitely feel it if you don't do any automation in your follow-up process, in your contact attempts. Speed's another big thing, right? Obviously, if a lead hits your website at like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. at night, probably no one's working, right? So having that automation hit them immediately, that's like, hey, thanks for reaching out. We've got your information. We're going to have somebody get back to you in the next 24 hours or the very next business day, whatever. And they're like, oh, great. This company got it. Got my info. They're going to get back to me right away. Again, this is the sample sequence you're seeing on your screen. How you set this up is really going to come down to your own personal preference. I do like in the first 24 hours, I think at one text and one email, whether you choose to do that in the first few minutes, in the first couple hours. Again, kind of how you want to time that and sequence that is up to you. And then from there, I like it kind of on the back end as more of a drip follow up. I've tried getting a hold of them. I haven't been able to. My team's been trying to get a hold of them. It's been over a week. They're now on a drip follow up where maybe they're getting a text or an email once a week, and then maybe it goes to once a month from there. Now, how a virtual assistant can help. Shout out to Hire Heroes. If you're looking for a vetted virtual assistant, somebody who is operating in the top 1% of delegated tasks, and then you feel like you're drowning and trying to do it all yourself, it's extremely hard to stay on top of contacting everyone that needs to be contacted. If we're talking about, every lead that needs to be called, every client that needs to be followed up with, you get really busy. You might start to let some of these fall through the cracks. And that's, again, going to really hurt your business, hurt your revenue if you're not getting a hold of people that you need to get a hold of. So I highly recommend heading over to hireheroes.com and grabbing a vetted virtual assistant from us now so you don't lose out on these important conversations that you need to be having. So how a virtual assistant can help with your contact rate, again, how you want to structure this follow-up, this contact rate, this contact funnel, I guess is kind of how I look at it. If you're a brand new agent and you're trying to figure this out, your contact funnel might be almost exclusively you with a little bit of automation. If you are an established agent, you might do some of this contact funnel. You make a few phone calls day one of the lead. And then maybe you have an admin or a virtual assistant that does a lot of the follow up from there if you can't get a hold of them. If you're an agency owner, your contact funnel might not include you at all, but maybe your LOAs are sprinkled in there. And then you have virtual assistants who are trying to continuously get these folks to schedule an appointment or to get them back on the phone to have that phone call. I think utilizing a virtual assistant can easily double or triple your contact rate if you're not using any type of admin. If you think you can do this all yourself, or you think you can do this all with just automations, I shared this story yesterday, but we had a client come to us at Hire Heroes, and they were trying to exclusively use automations. They were trying to avoid the phone entirely, and they were only getting about 15% of leads to schedule appointments. And that was really telling when I was able to have that conversation. I'm a fan of automations where they make sense, where you can fit them in. I look at it like seasoning on a good steak. You want to have some type of seasoning. But I think if you're exclusively doing automations and you're trying to avoid the phone, or you're doing very little phone work, you're probably missing out on a ton of opportunity. So having a virtual assistant come in and help you stay on top of this communication, stay on top of these follow-ups, and they're making these phone calls, I think it will double or triple your contact rate if you're not utilizing the phone properly. So you get to stay in your highest revenue generating activity. I talk about this all the time with a virtual assistant. Instead of doing something like scheduling appointments to put on a calendar, especially if you're selling face to face still, you get paid when you write applications. That is your highest revenue generating activity as an agent. So why would you do all of these low level tasks like managing a CRM, managing your calendar, managing emails coming in? This is something a $10 virtual assistant, again, shout out to Hire Heroes, they can help you with. You don't have to do every single little task in your business, in your agency. You can have somebody else help you, and you'll see that increase in contact rate. And if you double or triple your contact rate, what do you think happens to your closing percentage? It follows your contact rate. Your closing percentage should essentially double or triple right along with your contact rate going up. What is the perfect percentage? This was a question I got yesterday. What percentage of my leads, or how many of my leads should I be able to get a hold of? That's a big variable depending on the lead and how you're contacting them. Personally, I think the minimum is 60%. So at least 6 out of 10 leads, you should be able to have a conversation on the phone with, not necessarily a presentation, but at least a conversation. And if you're really strong with your follow-up attempts, you're using automation, you have a virtual assistant, you're on the phone a lot, maybe you can get that closer to 80%. There will be a portion of people that you can just never get on the phone. I was talking to an agent the other day where they were struggling to get a client, their own client that they had written an application for. They couldn't get a MedSub client to pick up their phone again. So you're going to have people that are really hard to get a hold of. But if you can get to a 20% a 20% fall off rate where 1 out of 5 you can't get a hold of, but you're talking to 4 out of 5, you're winning big time. Because I'd say the average contact rate with most agents is probably around 20%. Most agents are probably only getting a hold of 1 out of 5. And it could be for a variety of different reasons. Could be that they're not calling their leads. A lot of agents don't even call their leads. Could be that their phone number is flagged as spam. I mean, again, there's all these reasons why they don't get a hold of their leads. But if you can change that, and you're not the average agent, and you can get to 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 people, and you're actually talking to them, you're going to see your sales skyrocket with your contact rate. So again, some best practices on how you can delegate to a virtual assistant to increase your contact rate, having very clean scripting in place, making sure, I think a simple thing you can do is have them listen to you be on the phone for a couple days. Maybe they're listening to some previously recorded phone calls that you've done with clients or with leads. Then they can have a PDF of a script they need to follow. Maybe there's some reporting that they're either creating for you, or there's some automated reporting from the dialer that they're using that you can look at. You can review some of their recorded calls once they start making phone calls. There's so much, honestly, that a virtual assistant can do to help you. They can help with these automated follow-ups, these automated touch points that I talked about. Shout out again to Seven Figure CRM. If you don't have a system that can do automation, head over to sevenfigurecrm.com right now. Our CRM system can do automated touch points, and it can be completely customized based on your desires, how you want it set up. And if you don't know how to use it, your virtual assistant can also help you set up these automations, help set up your contact funnel. So I think this one is huge. So again, just to kind of recap here, we're getting towards the end of this, how you can increase your contact rate with leads and clients. Making sure your phone number, and again, guys, if you have any questions, drop them in the stream below, whether you're watching live or replay. I'll try to get to them. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about this. But just to kind of recap this, because I think, if you just do some of these simple things I was able to cover with you today, I think you'll see that contact rate go way up. So, number one, making sure your phone number is not showing up as spam when you're making these calls. That is huge. That can lead to a 3, 5, 10x increase in your contact rate if it's just showing up as a clean number, or if it's showing up as your business when you make that call. Calling at the right times. If you call super late at night, or you're calling like late on Fridays, or you're calling, Sundays, there's going to be certain parts of the week that are less optimized than potentially like a Saturday morning or a Monday to Friday morning. So, hitting some of the better time windows when you're more likely to get a hold of someone, especially based on the demographic that you're marketing to. Utilizing automated touch points. There's kind of a magic number of touch points, whether that's 10, 20, 30, the more the merrier, without a doubt. You don't want to harass someone, but you also want to stay in front of your leads and stay in front of your clients. I think a minimum of 10, and then putting them into kind of a drip follow-up is my minimum recommendation. You're obviously welcome to do more touch points than that, but I think if you're doing 10 and then you have some of this drip follow-up, I think you're going to see your contact rate go way, way up. And then having a virtual assistant who can help you make these calls and stay on top of your follow-up and make sure that contact rate is what it needs to be, right? It can be really tough. It can be really tough to do all the things. And if you start to let it fall through the cracks, and that contact rate falls through the cracks, it might seem like, didn't get to as many calls this week, and I only got to contact 1 out of 4 of my leads this week. That's only got 25% of my leads on the phone this week. It might not seem like a big deal, but what I'm hearing is lost revenue. You're losing an incredible amount of revenue if you're only speaking to 1 out of 4 leads. Again, the bare minimum, in my opinion, is you should be trying to get 6 out of 10 leads on the phone. If you can get to 6 out of 10, I think you're doing good. If you can get to 8 out of 10, you are crushing it. You are doing really, really good. So that is a little sneak peek into Seven Figure University. That's the type of training that Christian and I are doing on a weekly basis. If you enjoyed that training and you want more training like that, we have a massive library with hundreds of videos that are up to date, that we're constantly updating to make sure that they are staying relevant. Just like I talked about in today's video, this topic has evolved a ton over the past 10 years. If I gave you information on this 6 or 7 years ago, it wouldn't even be relevant anymore. So staying up to date on what's going on with this is really important. And Seven Figure University is a great way to stay plugged in as an agent and to have some of the best training available. Um, some of my final thoughts, you guys. Freebie Friday is today. That's right. We are giving away dental, vision, hearing, and turning 65 leads from Lead Heroes. Lillian had a question about how do I work dental, vision, hearing leads compared to Medicare leads, because they are different. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is a little bit of a different approach. What I have found personally is that the dental, vision, hearing leads are sometimes almost even easier to approach than a Medicare lead, in my opinion, because typically if it's something like dental, you can get right into that conversation, right? If they're responding to the marketing because they have an issue with their teeth or they're trying to find a dentist, you can typically get right into it. So, I think the first and most important part of that conversation is figuring out, well, which part of this was most important to you, Mrs. Jones? Was it the dental, the vision, or the hearing? Like, what are you having a problem with, or what do you need help with? And I think once you can flesh out, which part of it they're hoping to get help with, then I think you can get right into trying to qualify them for a potential policy or product. Okay, well, Mrs. Jones, based on what you're telling me, if you're looking for, some day one dental coverage and you haven't had a cleaning in 5 years and your current Medicare plan doesn't have dental coverage, it looks like you'd be able to qualify for this Emeritus plan, right? Or whatever dental, or, I've got a Aetna dental vision, whatever carrier you're able to work with that has a dental vision hearing plan. I think it's a huge opportunity, especially during the off season right now. You can build your book, you can make money now, and then you can help these people with their Medicare plans down the road once they're your client. So again, $9 dental vision hearing leads. That ends tonight. $29 turning 65 leads. That ends tonight. So do not wait. Grab those from Lead Heroes right now before that expires tonight. And again, Freebie Friday, comment below on the stream, comment on the stream from Wednesday, where we talked about fake leaderboards and fake sales posts from producers on social media. That gives you 2 chances to win. And you'll see that announcement later this afternoon right here in the Seven Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group. Guys, I appreciate all of you who watched till the end. You are the real MVP. We will be back with more new episodes on Monday, and I will have Mr. Brindle here with me. He's traveling right now, so you had another solo show with yours truly. But yes, that's the wraps on episode 232 of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And as always, happy selling.